What is going on, Dominators? Rico Garcia here, and I've got a really exciting episode for you today. As per usual, in the name of hustle, hack, and dominate, getting money as quickly as possible is probably at the forefront of any business, right? We want to avoid having cash flow issues, and in our restoration arena, collecting is, for a lot of us in the restoration arena, is one of the largest pains in the neck. And today's guest is actually going to help us solve that issue, or at least give us an option to solve said issue. And today we're going to be joined by Josh over at One Claim Solution. An amazing conversation. Josh has been in the industry for quite some time, really has built out this amazing system to help restoration professionals, on average, be able to collect in 32 days, which for a lot of us in the business realize that that is a huge improvement as to what we're normally doing in our day-to-day. Now, we obviously cover a lot of ground here, but this is one of those amazing episodes that, depending on where you are on your journey to building your business, this may be just one of those perfect solutions for you, especially if you are finding yourself spending a lot more time than you'd like on hold, or you have your staff being on hold trying to collect payments from insurance carriers. This may just be that one episode that you've been looking for. So without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Let's go.
Welcome to the Restoration Domination Podcast, where you learn actionable advice that moves the needle and helps service-based businesses dominate. Here's your host, Rico Garcia Jr.
What is going on, all of my dominators? Exciting show today. We're going to be talking about how to collect the money, how to do it more effectively, and possibly save you a couple of headaches along the way. As you guys know, we're all about presenting you with options, and that's what we're going to be doing here today. So thank you so much, brother, for jumping on the show and spending some time with us. Are you ready to help us dominate?
I'm ready. Let's roll.
Let's go. So for those that may not be familiar with the name, maybe you're not familiar with the company, do me a favor, fill in some of the gaps on the intro and let everybody know who you are and what exactly it is that you're doing for the industry.
Absolutely. So my name is Josh Ehmke. I'm an attorney. I've been in the restoration insurance billing space since 2014. Created a company called One Claim Solution, and we focus on helping restoration contractors, mostly in the emergency services space, submit those invoices to carriers how they need to be submitted, and provide the justifications to the carriers and follow that all the way through till the contractor gets a check in his hand. I am general counsel to the company. I'm co-owner of the company, and we've really been focused on improving contractors' ability to be paid on invoices that they submit for services rendered. That's what we do.
So walk us through the process, right? And do me a favor, kind of take a step back, right, and play devil's advocate if you can, because I know that there's a lot of contractors, and I've had the conversations with them personally, right, where it's like, man, I just feel like there's so many companies that are popping up and they're all trying to get a piece of the pie. They're all trying to say that they're providing this service on how they're going to make my life easier. And really what they're trying to do is just, in other words, there's a lack of trust, right? Not only against the carriers in a lot of cases, but even with real companies that provide a real service that are really trying to make contractors' lives easier, and yet there's some apprehension. So walk us through what it typically looks like and what kind of success perhaps that some of your clients are having.
Yeah, no doubt. And to touch base on that, that's something that I constantly harping on in the industry is there's a lot of distrust in the industry, whether it's from carrier to contractor, or contractor to contractor, contractor to carrier. There's just a lot of distrust. And so your question is well taken. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is our contractor retention. Since we started this thing, I can probably count on one hand the number of contractors that have started with us and left that are still in business. Mm-hmm. So our contractor retention is very high, and that goes to show that our services that we provide are very valuable to our contractors. And so what kind of separates us, or at least helps bring that value add, is just like in the medical billing space. Doctors aren't the ones on the phones dealing with medical health insurance companies. They have people, they outsource that. They have people that kind of specialize in dealing with insurance companies to handle that aspect of their business. They know that that's their highest and best use. And that's what we kind of help contractors understand too, is contractors have their own highest and best use. And that's not always, chasing down money and trying to deal with insurance carriers in order to receive payment or whatever that case may be. So that's really it. We have complete transparency in our entire process. The contractor receives regular reports and access to what it is that we're doing. Just about every single case we've ever had with a contractor, our contractor reports that their transparency and their visibility on their accounts receivable is clearer than it ever has been. And that's one of the benefits we didn't really anticipate coming across to our contractors, but they absolutely love it. So I would just kind of respond to that and the antitrust that is definitely an inherent issue in the industry, and our retention, I think, speaks volumes to why a contractor should consider looking at us and maybe getting over that trust issue. Look, when you're turning over your accounts receivable, that's a big deal. Cash is king. And without that, your company is, it's in limbo there. So it's a huge leap of faith, and definitely can understand and appreciate that aspect of it.
Oh, 100%. So do you have any stats or percentage perhaps of how you guys have been able to expedite the accounts receivable, right, payments from carriers after you guys have stepped in, as opposed to when contractors are trying to do it all by themselves, right? And the reason why I ask is, look, it's difficult, right? And the more that you grow, the harder it is. And for a lot of restoration contractors, you are pretty much everything, right? You're the owner, you're the operator, you're customer service, you're answering the phones, you're doing everything. And it gets to a point where eventually it's just daunting. You almost don't have a life. It's like, you got into business so that you can enjoy the fruits of your labor. And then it gets to a point where you just kind of stop in your office for a minute and you start looking around and you're like, man, this is not what I signed up for, because now you're constantly chasing down your money. And not only are you dealing with customers and you're dealing with your employees, but then on top of that, you're also getting your face bashed in by insurance carriers that are asking for additional documentation. They're, trying to knock down line items from your estimate that you legitimately should possibly be getting paid for, right? So there's obviously a time and money value scenario there. Have you guys noticed or received any response on how quickly you guys are now turning this around for contractors? Have they mentioned, how they've bought some of their time back or anything along those lines?
Absolutely. And the software that we've developed and created to run everything that we do, we have detailed notes on every single claim, every single adjuster that we ever come in contact with. So we are very big on keeping track of that type of data. So we can pull very quick reports showing our turnaround time. How many days does it take to collect? What's our average collection rate? And when we set up a contractor, that's something we establish with them on the front end, is we want to know what their average data collection was prior to coming to One Claim Solution, which I'm going to refer to as OCS. What was that like? What was their average collection rate before coming to us? So these are all metrics that we're going to gauge and measure, and we absolutely have those stats. Right now, our average turnaround time across the country is right at about 32 days for payment, and depends on how aggressive a contractor gets on what our collection rate is. But almost always we're able to collect more than the contractor was in the first place. So collect faster, collect more. And as far as contractors go, have we had any feedback? The contractor came to my mind is a contractor that's been with me from just about the beginning, since pretty much 2016, an older gentleman here in Arizona, been in the industry since probably about time I was born. And he was just so tired and fed up with the headache of arguing with adjusters all day, every day. In order to get his stuff paid, he was close to walking away from the industry. And something that he's told me in his feedback is, man, you took that biggest headache of this industry away from me, and you've actually helped me enjoy what I do again. And you do it better than I was doing it anyways. And so he's a huge advocate of what we do. And And that's really the feedback we get for everybody, from everybody, is that it just takes that biggest headache away from them in the industry and in what they do. And we do it better than they would have done it anyways. So, and we kind of pride ourselves on that. We really do try to help contractors focus on doing what they do, and let us take on.
How does the communication work? Because again, and we understand the dynamic, right? Anybody who's ever, submitted an estimate or an invoice, call it what you will, to an insurance carrier knows that there's going to be, it's rare on the occasion where they just look at the estimate or the invoice and be like, no problem. And they just send you out 100% of the invoice.
Love those ones.
Yeah. But they are in fact rare, right? I mean, yes. It's not common practice, because whether the estimate is perfect or not, or if everything is justified, if you've documented everything, it's almost this unspoken thing where there's the opposite player, in this case, the carrier. And part of their responsibility is to give you a little bit of a hard time, right? Like they want to secure their job. They want to make sure that they're just not stroking checks out to everybody. So knowing that, what's the communication look like between you and a contractor? Let's say I sign up with you guys and I'm like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'd love to go ahead and take this off my plate. I hate being on the phone for hours on end, trying to find my desk adjuster, trying to find the claims examiner, and then, resubmitting documentation that they should have had months ago. Take this off my plate, just collect my money, call it a day. Is there a percentage of my estimate or of my invoice that you guys will just simply not settle unless there's some sort of communication with me, the contractor? Or how does that work? In other words, if you guys are just getting, if you get an offer for like 50%, right? Like, most contractors will be like, well, I don't want to take 50% on this, right?
Right.
That's what I'm trying to get at. So what's that threshold? Is there a threshold? How do you guys communicate that?
Yes, there is a threshold. And that goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier, where we want to establish that parameter on the front end, kind of see what they were doing before they came to us, right? Mm-hmm. And as part of that onboarding process, we're going to establish expectations with the contractor. And that may vary by contractor. But once we establish that expectation, our team has the ability and the autonomy to be able to settle with the carrier as long as we are at or higher than that amount. And so if we come in lower than that, then we're going to be on the phone with the contractor and saying, hey, here's some of the issues we're having on this one. Based on the documentation I have, I don't quite see what it is here. Can you maybe help me? So we'll be in touch with the contractor on that end. And sometimes, the contractor will be like, hey man, that was just a messy job. Just close that one down and take what they gave us. Or They're like, no. Here's the information you're going to need. Sorry, I didn't get that to you sooner. And then we don't just take that undisputed payment and be done. That's not the end of it with the carrier. So I'm really big, and our company's been set up this way, on accountability. I've held my life like that, where I'm not going to hold somebody else accountable if I can't look in the mirror and say, yeah, you've been held accountable too, and I'm doing it the right way. So we're going to try to bring accountability to the entire industry there. So when we do sign on with a contractor, that's one of the initial things we're going to do. We're going to go through all of their paperwork. We're going to make sure that it's on the up and up. We're going to look at their invoices to make sure that they're accurate, that they're correct, that they're really maximizing the value that they can there as well. But by doing it under the umbrella of being accountable and under, doing it the right way. So once we do that and establish that with the contractor, it's a lot easier for us to then go around to the carrier and now try to hold them accountable as well by paying what is reasonable, what is justifiable on the invoice. And so, yes, that's absolutely something that we establish on the front end with contractors, but that communication is going to go on because every claim is different. And every contractor has, access to they're going to have an account manager that's primarily responsible for their stuff, and they'll have a team underneath them to handle that contractor's invoices and insurance claims. But then they also, always have direct access to me or anybody else in the company if they've got questions. And that's one of the cool things is I don't charge by the billable hour for what I do. So it's just part of it, right? Contractors love being able to, hey, Josh, just had this issue come up with an
Yeah,
adjuster. How should I respond?
you're not milking the hours, right? Which
right.
is a kind of a fear factor with a lot of people when they
That's
get
right.
attorneys involved in any scenario. It's like, well, wait, hold on, really, what am I getting charged for here? So let's kind of go back to the onboarding process, because I think the onboarding process is really important, right? Because
Absolutely.
you need to know who you're going to be dealing with, and the contractor also wants to know who they're dealing with. More importantly, they really need to be made aware of what they don't know, what they haven't been doing. And I'm going back to this for a couple of reasons. One of them, and if you can kind of give me the double whammy here and answer these two questions, right? Because a lot of times you're like, well, you on the onboarding process, what you do is you ask contractors what their close rate is. Let's call it that, right? Like, what percentage are they normally settling for? And I know from speaking to a lot of contractors, they don't really always know that. And what they spit out is some absurd number. They're like, I get 98%.
We make them prove it.
Right. So, how do you improve throughout this, onboarding process? What are all the things that you look at? How do you help a contractor improve? How do you make this process easier?
So there's a lot of different things that we're going to look at. Like I said, from the attorney aspect, one of the first things I'm going to look at is documentation. Do you have the right work authorizations? Do you have the right verbiage in those work authorizations? Do you have the right supporting documentation to justify and support the invoice to help us have the tools we need in order to reach appropriate settlements on the back end? But specifically concerning the contractor's invoicing habits or practices, we're going to ask for a handful of past files. We're going to do a review on a handful of their past, invoices. We're going to look at that documentation. We're going to ask for, and it's nothing tedious. It's something that's like, hey, give us your last 60 days worth of invoices that
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, give us the initial invoiced amount. Now also give us at the end of the day what you actually collected on those invoices. A lot of times the contractors say, I collect 100% my invoices. Well, yeah, after you reduce them and take line items off and negotiate with the insurance company, then you collect 100%. But how much of your original invoice is actually collected? And that's the baseline that we try to establish with the contractor there. Like I said, it's we do a little bit of a deep dive there. And don't just take the contractor's word for it. A lot of times contractor can't even do that. And so, when that's the case, it's literally just, hey, this is kind of what we see as the average collection rate in the industry of contractors that are in your current situation. And we're going to just go off of that. And we're just basically going to start you from brand new.
Mm-hmm. What do you, okay, whatever. So kind of going on that, like, what do you see? Like, what should a contractor be shooting for? Is there a magical percentage point of their overall estimate or invoice that they should be going for?
It kind of depends on the structure of that invoice, right? Is the contractor, are they billing straight up Xactimate published rates? Have they taken that next step and actually tried to customize and use Xactimate how it should be used for their company? And are they using a customized price list that matches what their company's needs are and costs are? And so it kind of depends on that. But typically, if a contractor is billing straight up Xactimate, we see an average of anywhere from 70% up to 90% of what that Xactimate published price invoice amount is that's being collected. And
so how does
even
that
on the
change
90%,
how does that change when you start customizing it, right? Because again, every company is so unique. Mm-hmm. Every company has a very different overhead. It's just totally different, right? You just can't compare one company to the next. And also when you're looking at different areas, right? A company here in Miami is going to have probably greater overhead than a company out in Wyoming, right? I don't know if that's true, but I'm just speculating here, right? So,
yes.
So that, taking that into consideration, once you start making some customizations, which again, I believe that if you're using Xactimate properly as a tool, it should be more representative of your company. Does that change the percentage of invoice totals that should be getting collected?
Does it change the percentage rate of what is being collected? That's a tough question to answer, because a lot of times when contractors come to us, they don't have customized pricing. And so our collection rate is going to change anyways, because we're good at what we do. So we're going to increase that collection rate.
Right.
But had a contractor bend straight up Xactimate published pricing and then on their own customize their price list, I would say that ratio would go down. The percentage of the bill collected will go down. So where you might have a $10,000 invoice, right, at published pricing, with the customized price list, it might go up to 11,000 or 12,000. But your percentage, instead of collecting 8,500 of the 10,000, you might only collect 10,000 of the 1,200. But so it's a smaller percentage, but you're collecting more of it.
Right.
And that's not the point of using the customized pricing. It's not just to collect more per se and inflate your invoice. It's actually to build a more accurate and accountable invoice that is more representative of your company and your company's costs.
Right.
And being able to input your own data for what your services are. And so, but yes, I would say that a customized price list, if it ends up being higher than, some customized price lists, line items come in lower than Xactimate's published price list, and some of them come in higher. But the ones that come in higher, the carriers might push back on some of that, but that doesn't make it unjustifiable or unreasonable. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, you're charging more, so you're probably going to get paid a little bit less.
Right. So we were talking off camera about, how to, obviously throughout your onboarding process, and how to potentially make estimates better, make them more accurate. And we're talking about the actionable profile, and how I think personally that this is going to become like the new standard for contractors, right? And, I kind of gave you like the skinny on why I love it so much. For those that are watching and listening that may not have heard about the actionable profile yet, let me just give you a quick little snippet of what that is. Essentially, it's AI that plugs right into your Xactimate profile. So as you're writing estimates, what happens is it will give you either a green light or a red light with existing line items that you may have forgotten based on the line items that you are currently putting into your estimate. And it takes everything into account: your sketching, the building, like the whole shebang. And then it will also give you, let's call this like a red camp, right? Where it also gives you kind of like a red flag if you have line items that are constantly like contradicting, right? Now, and the reason why I bring this up is because you deal with a lot of estimates, right? And you're trying to collect on these estimates. And I would say that besides your run-of-the-mill documentation that everybody should be providing, that being pictures, F9 notes, things of that nature, right? The biggest holdup is usually a debate on line items, right? So just, from an outsider in, if all of your people were using, or if all contractors were using this kind of tech to kind of provide more of a uniform type of estimate, how do you feel that would affect the debate, right? That goes back between the desk adjuster and you, let's say.
Yeah. Like I said, Rico, I'm all about accountability, and having a clean, accurate estimate or invoice coming from the contractor. That's huge for us to be able to have confidence in presenting an accurate invoice to the carrier. It goes a long ways, being in this industry since 2014, I've been fortunate enough to be involved in the cutting edge and the forefront of a lot of different stuff. We've established some very key case law here in Arizona that's been absolutely instrumental. And so I'm able to see different things that help the industry out. We represent a lot of contractors throughout the country, so we're able to see these trends. But I have no pony in the fight with the actionable program. I'd heard about it, but I didn't know hardly anything about it until you and I were discussing it earlier. And I'm telling you, this is going to be a game changer, because it's going to bring that level of accountability to the contractor that the carriers have been looking for a long time. And it's going to give the contractor even more confidence in their own invoice, because they're going to know it's accurate. And it's going to give the people actually doing the collecting on those invoices more confidence because they know it's accurate. It's going to be a big deal. And I can see that really affecting the industry quite a bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's all about that, right? And sometimes, again, because there's so many changes so rapidly, not only in the industry, right, but it's also standards change and then line items change all the time. And if you're out there in the field and you're grinding and you're hustling or you're just estimating all day and you feel that you are an amazing estimator, look, by the time that you get to your 15th estimate for the day, you start looking cross-eyed at the screen, right? Like you start to forget things. Like we're human, right? We're not machines. So to have this, coach, I feel that's kind of like over your shoulder in real time saying, hey, by the way, you forgot this one little thing. You're like, oh my God, that's so stupid. I always put that in, right? So I just think it's really, really awesome. And I feel like even, again, eliminating friction, right? Like business is all about how can I eliminate friction? Because the less friction you have, the dollar goes a longer way, right? So it's not always about making more. It's about, it's not about how much you make. It's about how much you keep, right? And if you can save it on time, well, now you just increase your overall profitability. And I think that this is really cool, like to really, tell contractors, but like, great, look, you guys can go ahead, one claim, go ahead and chase down my money. I can go ahead and get back to doing what it is that I do. But they still have a very intricate role to play, which is to provide the proper documentation, making sure that their contracts are right, and making sure that the estimate is done properly to provide you with the tools that they need in order to be successful, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like I said earlier, Xactimate, I've always thought is a fantastic tool. It's great, but it's only as effective as its user is in using it. And not everybody has the time to go and get all these different certifications and trained in Xactimate. And even when they are, they're still human and they're still going to make some mistakes and leave some line items out here and there. And with the introduction of that type of a thing, it's going to help a contractor make sure that they truly are billing what they need to be billing for their services and they're not missing anything. I think it's absolutely essential. And it's another aspect of peace of mind for that contractor in their business. I can't tell you how many times a day I get a call from a contractor. Hey, what are you seeing with my invoices? Am I leaving anything out? What are you seeing in the industry with trends? What am I missing? What can I do to add some more value there? Well,
right.
This is going to be another one of those tools for the contractor to be able to have a little bit more confidence in the invoice they're giving us, which I think is gigantic.
Yeah, that's awesome. So kind of switching gears, right? Let's talk about the industry as a general whole, and it's just the overall landscape of what you see when you're having conversations with the insurance carriers, right? And how fast they're paying, what they're not paying for. And, when you kind of look off into the horizon as far as what's happening in the industry and what contractors should be watching out for, kind of give us your opinion on that. But before you go ahead and do that, let's just go ahead and take a quick moment and thank our sponsors. Did you know that you can create more accurate estimates and avoid costly estimating mistakes with the actionable Xactimate profile? The actionable profile actually provides you with live estimating guidance while you are writing your estimate. That's right. Actionable's Xactimate profile will literally tell you when you're making a mistake. And it's also going to remind you about all of those line items that you probably should be adding to your scope anyways. Again, all of this happens in real time while you are writing the scope. It's a win-win, less mistakes and including more warranted line items along the way. That's what it means to estimate with the actionable profile in Xactimate. Hey, real quick, are you a restoration pro looking to hire top talent inside of our industry? We all know that labor shortages are real, but I may have a solution for you, okay? And that is Wylander. Why? Well, very simple. They are the go-to recruiting company inside of the restoration arena. Well, the reason I say that is very simple. They've got proofs in the pudding. They've got over 1,000 placements in all 50 states, plus Canada. And what that means is that they not only have the expertise, but more importantly, they have the connections to find that top industry talent that you and your team are looking for. So stop wasting time. Stop sifting through tons and tons of resumes and just conducting endless interviews. Let Wylander do the heavy lifting for you and help you find that right person to help your company succeed. Call Wylander today and start building that dream team inside of the restoration arena. Hey, Dominators, real quick, let me ask you a question. How would you like to increase productivity? How would you like faster claims resolution? And more importantly, how would you like to reduce litigation? Well, this is exactly what Impartial allows you to do. Impartial creates timely, accurate estimates for faster and fair claim settlement. Building upon Matterport's technology, the Impartial Scope tool extracts the relevant data embedded with pre-mitigation and post-mitigation scans and subsequently renders an exactimate or assemblability estimate that can be approved by a carrier without any hesitation. The magic here is that the software helps contractors generate mitigation and repair estimates for more rapid approval from insurance carriers while removing the burdensome administrative process. Each Impartial estimate is produced with objective accuracy using immersive 3D imagery and precise physical and geospatial measurements. Impartial, in my opinion, is one of those tools that simply can go ahead and change your business. And with so many features such as Impartial tags, timestamp matter tags, the ability to upload JPEG, PNG, ESX, and so much more. Impartial is that software that could genuinely change your business. Make sure that you check them out in the video description below or in the show notes and see for yourself. All right, so we're back. So we're talking about now, kind of switching gears a little bit about, the overall state of the industry. Like, what should contractors be looking out for? Is there anything that you're seeing, considering that you're in the weeds all day, every day? You've got clients all over the country, right? So you've got people in Arizona, you got people in Florida, you got people in several states that you're representing. There's obviously lots of different state laws that affect how billing is taking place. But as a general whole in the industry, are there any red flags that contractors should be kind of keeping an eye out for, or should they be preparing themselves for anything that you see coming down the horizon within the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Other than the ever-present, well, this carrier pays for this line item, but this one doesn't, that's always going to shift. Okay. Those trends will always change, whether, it's State Farm paying for emergency service calls or to decontaminate equipment, whatever it is. Those things will always be there, and you just got to stay on top of it. But what I see as being some of the biggest challenges that the industry is going to face is, unfortunately, Americans as a society, we tend to be quite litigious sometimes. And, you still see on TV all these commercials for mesothelioma and getting sick from asbestos and these types of things. For the most part, the restoration industry is still quite young, with all things considered. And I think there's a lot of regulations out there that are that are getting ignored. And I think that is going to be a problem for a lot of these restoration contractors that aren't abiding by these OSHA standards or in any other indoor air quality, standards that they're just not following. I know you recently had Brandon White on as a guest on one of your podcasts. I know Brandon quite well, extremely knowledgeable. That's one of his top buttons, is he's always just out there going, guys, you really need to be paying attention to these standards. This can come back and really bite you guys. And what's the point in doing everything that we're doing if it can all be taken away from us at the drop of a hat because we ignored a federal regulation? Right. I think that's a big deal. A lot of carriers either, number one, don't understand those regulations yet, or they just choose to ignore those as well. But when we're able to educate the carrier on what these regulations are and why a contractor has certain charges in their invoice, those things get paid. Contractors are afraid of doing it because sometimes they don't get paid. And my counter argument to that is, even if they don't get paid, it's got to be a cost of doing business that you do to protect yourself moving forward. I think that's where it ultimately comes down into is as the industry continues to grow and develop, I think other attorneys will get involved, other industries might get involved to bring some accountability to contractors. And if we can get on the front end of that and bring the accountability ourselves, I think that's going to save a lot of heartache to contractors in the long run. I would say that's probably one of the biggest problems facing the industry. I mean, the relationship between contractors and carriers is inherently adverse by nature, right? We're trying to get our invoices paid. Insurance companies are trying to pay as least amount possible in order to protect their bottom line. That's just the way that it is. Doesn't mean it has to be a hostile relationship, but that's always going to be a problem in the industry. And, anytime we can bring accountability to that is the goal.
Right. And
both sides.
And that makes perfect sense. Right. So moving forward, right. What other topics, what other hot points from your company perspective and dealing with contractors should we be made aware of, right? Like what are the right questions that contractors should be asking themselves when saying, hey, look, is this becoming too much for me? Should I look at having someone come on board that I can put my invoices off to and they're going to be collecting? Like, what are those questions that contractors should be asking themselves?
One of my ideals or the principles by which I govern my own life and business is, what is my highest and best use? Where is my time best used in order to bring the most amount of value to my company, right? And I would think that needs to be the number one question a contractor asks themselves. What's my highest and best use? And am I doing that? Yes, I'm good at collecting my invoices from carriers. Cool. Is that your best use? Or is there something else that you can be doing to maximize your value? Can you find somebody else that's just as good as you, if not better, for that aspect of it so that you can focus on some other aspect of your business? I think that those are the contractors that fit the best with us, are the ones that can see through that and say, hey, yeah, I'm good at that. Or even admit, I'm not quite the best at that, but I just have a hard time relinquishing that control. But those are the ones that okay, can I take that time I'm spending on the phone with adjusters or tracking down payment from policyholders or whatever it might be, and can I reinvest that time and that energy into stuff that I like more and stuff that I'm probably better at and that bring more value to my company? Those are the questions that contractors need to be asking themselves is, yes, we're doing this okay. Is there a better way? And just because it's outsourced, does that mean I'm losing control? Those are the questions.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, no. Like, because how many times, and I'm huge on outsourcing and finding talent, for your company, right? Because this is a way for you to always buy back time. But now, that being said, there's probably several people that are listening or watching and saying, well, you know what, Rico, like I'm not doing this as an owner. I'm not doing this as a manager. I've got a team in place that's already collecting. So what's the dynamic look there, right? Like, because I'm sure you've probably had, or have several clients that did in fact have an in-house team that's what they did, right? How does that dynamic look like from a profitability standpoint, from a time-saving aspect? Like, what does that dynamic look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a question that we haven't really done a deep dive into, right? Whereas, okay, this is what it's costing you for our services, but how much is it actually saving you from an internal overhead standpoint, right? A lot of contractors or companies in general, they like their staff. They feel a personal obligation to their staff. And we recognize that and can understand that. And what we try to do is work with the contractor to say, hey, you don't have to get rid of these people if you have that type of a relationship with them. You can highest and best use them too in some other aspect. We're still going to need people at the company to communicate with us and get us documentation that we're going to need. But one of the topics at the Interconnect conference in LA a couple weeks ago was the staffing issues that companies are facing right now. And like it or not, accounts receivable is a very high turnover position. It's unpleasant. A lot of people don't like arguing with adjusters all day for a job. And you couple that with the fact that most companies depending on where they're at, they have a very busy season and they have a very slow season. And so their staff is going to fluctuate based on that. That's something they no longer have to worry about is staffing appropriately during their busy season, their slow season, and just staffing appropriately in general. That, at least when it comes to the accounts receivable department, that we kind of take that on for them and take that headache away from them. But it definitely comes at a cost savings for them, for sure.
Right. And that's ultimately obviously that's going to vary from organization to organization. But, again, in business, I think that we all have to, from time to time, take a step back and be like, okay, great. I've been doing this. It's been working. Question is can I get it working better? Right. And look, if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. Right. I'm not saying, hey, make this decision or make that decision. But as a business owner, you kind of owe it to yourself. You owe it to your company, to the longevity of your company, to experiment from time to time and say, okay, could I possibly have found a better way? Can I even get more longevity out of my existing staff if I was to outsource this aspect of my business? And could I get them making, or participating in more profitable activities for my company? Right.
Yes.
So all of these things are, in the realm of business, things that business owners should really be considering it heavily. So That being said, for those that are watching and listening to the show, they're like, you know what? I hate invoicing. I hate the collections process. I'd rather be doing anything else other than doing that aspect of the business, right? They're great restorers. They are, magnificent managers. They're great at hiring and finding new talent and cultivating new talent in the industry. And honestly, sitting on hold is probably not the best use of their time. Nickel and diming, if you will, a particular line item may not be the best use of their time. So if they are listening to this and they're like, man, you know what, this sounds really interesting. Let me go ahead and entertain this. How can people get in contact with you, your organization, and how quickly after they reach out, could they potentially start sending you files and get you to start making those collections for them?
Yeah. So you can get a hold of us. We have a website. It is oneclaimsolution.com, all singular, all spelled out. oneclaimsolution.com, and you can get in touch with us there. You can also contact, I'll shoot you an email, which is, it'll go Josh at, and then the number 1-claim.com. So Josh at 1-claim.com, and you can get information there. What I would say to those contractors is reach out. Some of my favorite clients and contractors that I represent are the contractors that show up to a referral or a potential water mitigation loss, and they look at it and say, guys, there's really not much here to do. Probably recommend not filing a claim and let's just do a small, cash pay type of a thing. Not every referral or every job needs to go through the claim process. And we kind of have the same mentality when it comes to contractors. We have a contractor come in, when we do our deep dive, there are times where we tell the contractor, you guys are killing it. You're doing a great job on your own. We'd love to take on that headache for you. We'd probably do it just as well, maybe a little better than you could. But you guys are doing a great job. We'd be a fit, but you don't absolutely need us, and other contractors, it's like, yeah, you guys really need us. You really need us. So that's part of the analysis that we do too. And we're not afraid to tell a contractor that maybe it's not the perfect fit. We know who we fit well with, and where we fit well, we fit great. And it works really well. So that's how they should contact us, oneclaimsolution.com.
Okay, awesome. And Josh, man, thank you so much for taking the time, to hang out with us today, to give us an idea as to, what kind of value it is that you're adding to us contractors. And for all of those dominators out there, I am going to leave all of the links to everything that we mentioned today, how to get in contact with the company, email, everything is going to be in the video description below, as well as in the show notes. And remember, as usual, hustle, hack, dominate. I will catch you guys on the next one.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, your number one resource for tips, tricks, and hacks to help your business grow. Subscribe to our channel and follow us for more Restoration Domination. And follow our host at Rico Garcia Jr. on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack. Dominate.